One of the features of my Flutter game is audio. I like to set the scene with background music when you enter a settlement, or raise the stakes with background music when you enter combat. Additionally, when you cast a fireball, it needs to sound like you're casting a fireball. So the way that I handled that was actually really straightforward. There are a lot of great libraries out there for managing audio in Flutter, and I used a package called Just Audio. The trickier part with this is that Just Audio is definitely built for applications that are more media player centric. So think of like Apple Music or Spotify. You can use it for other things, and I am, but there's a couple things that you have to kind of set up on your own. And some of that is audio ducking. So the idea of audio ducking is when my application goes to the background, I want to duck the audio, so remove the audio. And then whenever it comes back, I want to play the audio again. It's actually really not that hard to set up in Flutter, but it's a little weird. So I'm going to walk you through how I set that up in my game today, and you can do that with your game or your own applications fairly similarly. Okay, so we'll be quick on the audio engine because there's not a ton going on here that's relevant. But I import Just Audio, and I have my class. I use this pattern, technically this entire pattern, to get a static singleton from instance, this getter right here. Okay, I have two players. I've got a foreground player and a background player. Foreground is for sound effects. Background is for the background music. I have a method on here called resume, and I have a method on here called play. So resume will resume background music. Play will play sound effects. Loop will play background music. You don't really need to worry too much about this, like the actual implementation here. The key thing is just knowing that these methods exist. In fact, an outline might be more helpful if I have one. Yes, here we go. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but yeah, these are the methods that exist on that player. So resume, play, loop, stop background, and then the constructor. So this works as you'd expect, but when you start to duck the application, you minimize the application on your iOS or Android device by swiping up and sending it to the background. The music keeps playing, and that's not good, especially for a game. Again, if this was a media player like Spotify or something, that actually might be expected. But for a game, if the music keeps playing when you bring the game out of focus, that's a little strange. So here's how I handled this, right? So I added a new component, a new widget, called audio frame. The audio frame is really, really simple. It's a stateful widget, and it takes in a child. The reason it's a stateful widget is because we add this WidgetsBindingObserver mix-in. So you can see here, this is an interface for classes that register with the widgets layer binding. It can be used on any class, not just widgets. Provides an interface, add observer, remove observer, basically allowing you to trigger things when the widget binding events are fired. So we specifically have one event that we care about here, and it is this did change app lifecycle state. So what we do is, let's just walk through the whole component really quick because it's very straightforward. You give it a widget, the build just returns that widget. So it's a pass-through component that does not modify the widget tree, or it doesn't wrap the child with anything. And instead, it just provides this method called did change app lifecycle state. We have to bind the observer, right? So we get these things right here, our init state method and our dispose method. So always call your super, and then we want to add an observer, and the observer is this because we are providing this mix-in. In theory, we probably could pull this out to the audio engine if we wanted to, and maybe that's a good idea in the future, but I'll worry about that at another time. This works for now. And then we also have our dispose method. So our dispose method removes the observer and then calls super dispose. Remember, in your dispose, your super is your last call, not your first call like init state. Okay, so now that we have that in mind, we're adding observer for the widget binding instance, and then we trigger this did change app lifecycle state. So we get an app lifecycle state, And when it's resumed, we say audio engine instance resume. Remember, we have that resume method over here, right here. And when it's not resumed, there are a couple cases here where the app could be closed, it could be ducked or minimized. You have a couple different options. So I just default to stopping the background music because there's only one case we want to resume it, which is when the app is resumed. So keep in mind that this is your widget binding state. This isn't like stateful widgets like init state and dispose. So whenever you trigger things like that, it's not going to trigger this. The key thing here is when the app lifecycle, not the widget lifecycle, makes a change, or has a change, I should say, this will get called. And that basically sums it up. I just wrap the entire material app in this audio frame. And now whenever I duck my application or minimize my application, the music ducks with it. And whenever I bring it back, it starts again. And that's how I solve that problem. So hopefully this was helpful. And if you are building a Flutter game, you should also look at Flame. They have an audio engine built into the Flame game framework that probably takes care of all this for you. I'm starting to explore that myself and learning more, but one of my goals with this was to build the game in pure Flutter, and that's how I handled audio with that. Thanks. If you haven't yet, don't forget, subscribe to the channel so you can get more notifications for videos like this, where you will learn Flutter things, Go things, Svelte things, all sorts of different things. And if you found this helpful, send it to a friend who also might find it helpful. Thanks. Have a great day.